Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Master Herbalist Stephen Horne. Woo!
I didn't know I was a rock star. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be in Canada. I always love coming to Canada. You wonderful, wonderful people. Today we're going to talk about a foundational concept of natural healing. I was talking with a group of managers at lunch at the time of the Bronze Academy. We're talking about the fact that although a lot of this stuff may seem old to us, to most of the world, this is radical thinking, right? You know, this is stuff that I've been working with for many, many years, but every time you talk to someone new, most of the time they've never heard of this before. And it's very important that we get people to understand this. I got involved in natural healing because I was not getting well with orthodox medicine. Chronic sinus problems, got sick very easily, nothing seemed to help. Antibiotics, antihistamines, all of those things. Wound up in bed for 2 weeks with walking pneumonia. And I finally decided to try something different. So I started dabbling in herbs, started dabbling in nutrition. I started to get a little better. But I couldn't figure out why sometimes it seemed to work and sometimes it didn't seem to work. And it was when I read this little quote from Samuel Thompson that the light bulb went on in my head. When he said, "Let names of all disorders be, like to the limbs joined to the tree. Work on the root, and that subdue, and all the limbs will bow to you." And I saw this image of what I call the disease tree, and saw that all of the illnesses that people experience went back to certain basic root causes. So to understand this, after years and years of working with this concept, I want to kind of elaborate on this idea that it's not just changing from using drugs and surgery and medical things to using herbs and nutritional supplements and massage and natural healing techniques. It's reframing our entire understanding of what is health and what is disease. You see, most people think of health as the absence of disease, but it's really the reverse. Disease is the absence of health, right? Health is the natural state of the body. And a good analogy is to think of it in terms of light and darkness. Darkness isn't something. Darkness is a lack of something, right? It's a lack of light. You don't cure darkness with anything but shining a light into it. And you don't help people be healthy by anything other than doing the things that make people healthy. It's not really about treating disease at all. It's about creating a healthy life. In fact, the naming of diseases is actually not necessary to getting people healthy. Okay? I love this quote from Samuel Thompson's book, New Guide to Health. "The people are kept ignorant of everything important in medicine by keeping it in a dead language, i.e. Latin." And an example of that is, you know, you get some pain in your joint's a little swollen and it hurts, and maybe if you really look closely, it's probably a little red, and you go to the doctor and he says, "You have arthritis." She says, "You see, my joint's swollen, it's a little red, it hurts." And he says, "You have arthritis." Arthritis is arthro, joint, itis, Latin. Itis is heat, swelling, redness, and pain. You told him in English you had heat and swelling and redness and pain in your joint. He told you in Latin you had heat, swelling, and redness and pain in your joint. And you think that's a diagnosis, right? You see, Samuel Thompson said the knowledge of the name is the cumin and anise, the little teeny seeds. It's not that important. In the knowledge of the origin of a malady and its antidote lies the real matter of the science. That's what makes the genuine physician, and all without it is real quackery. See, what you have with diseases is most disease names are just names for patterns of symptoms. Now, it gets worse. When I was a teenager, one of my friends had a t-shirt that said "eschew obfuscation." Now, what that means is avoid obscurity. And so, of course, what we do is we've gone from naming diseases in Latin to getting marketing companies involved in naming diseases so that they can sell drugs, right? So shyness becomes social anxiety disorder, because shyness doesn't sound that serious, but social anxiety disorder, oh my, that's, heartburn becomes gastroesophageal reflux disorder, right? Okay? So restless children now have attention deficit hyperactive disorder, right? We are basically taking language and we're making things sound really, really bad so you can sell more drugs, right? Okay? I mean, I love a skit by George Carlin where he says, World War I, they called it shell shock. Very nice, 2 words, simple. Then they changed it to battle fatigue, okay? And now it's post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And so we're making everything complicated. But that's not even the worst of it. There's this quote from a book called Specific Diagnosis by Scudder, who's one of the eclectic physicians, and he says, diagnosis has reference to the classification of disease according to the received nosology, which is the classification of diseases, that it means naming the affliction. And he says the doctors travail in diagnosis until a suitable name is delivered, and then they consult their memory and books for recipes to throw at the name, which to them seems almost an entity, okay? It looks absurd when thus plainly stated, yet it is true to a far greater extent than the majority suppose. Okay, now it's even worse, because I know in the States we have an entire system put in by the federal government of codes for diseases. So you have this little code of a number for each disease, and the whole struggle of the doctors is to find the right little codes to assign you to so that they can give the right medicines, whatever. And people are so brainwashed by this kind of thinking that they all believe that this is healing. It's not. You're prescribing at names is one of the worst ways to practice all this, and yet it's what almost everybody does. I mean, what happens when someone walks into your office? What do they say? I have blah, 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 right? Fix me. And they think that this is sufficient information, right, to tell you how to help them with their health. And it's not, okay? He says, what could be more natural than medicine should be prescribed at names when we work so hard to affix them, all right? The truth is that disease is a life process. It arises because the body is not getting things it needs, and it's getting things it doesn't need, right? And so the body then is out of balance, and the symptoms are basically the body trying to cope with that imbalance, right? The symptoms are just the body trying to cope with the problem. They aren't the problem. They're the coping mechanisms for the problem. Okay? And that was the brilliant thing that turned on in my head when I realized that the symptoms weren't the disease. The symptoms were actually the body trying to cope with the disease. And that if I attacked the symptoms, I was actually making the problem worse by throwing the body even further out of balance. That what I had to do is I had to dig deeper and say, why is that happening? This is also from Scudder. And I'm just going to read the last part. He says, disease then is not an entity. Okay, it's not something that exists apart from you. To be forcibly expelled from the living body, it is actually a method of life. It's actually a process of life trying to cope with it. So it says here, symptoms aren't the problem. Symptoms may be annoying, but they are the results of a lack of health and vitality, not the cause of a lack of health and vitality. You get it? Right? It's that simple. Therefore, treating symptoms without addressing what is causing the person to lose health and vitality is pretty worthless. Or to put it very plainly, as Samuel Thompson said, if you remove the cause, the effect will cease. Right? So we have to reframe the way we think of symptoms. Probably all are familiar with automobiles, and you have these little warning lights, right? That blink at you that say your engine temperature is getting too hot, or you're running low on gas, or whatever. The warning light isn't the problem, is it? The warning light is the message there is a problem. And you pay attention to the warning light. And so I've read an analogy that I think is really good. Treating symptoms is like cutting the wires to the warning light and thinking you've solved the problem. Right? All you've done is made it easier to avoid the problem, but you haven't really corrected it. I wish that I could get on stages and give this message to stadiums with millions of people. This is so important. It is so radical, and yet it is absolutely true. It is absolutely true. Now, when I first started thinking this way, it was like, am I doing the right thing? You know, it was a little, I mean, it made sense to me, but I had to totally reframe my way of thinking of things. But once I did, then I started to get very consistent good results, because I was no longer trying to attack the symptoms. I was trying to figure out what's making the person sick and fix it, right? So, you know, the body communicates to us. We need food. Body says, I'm hungry, give me food. We need water. Body says, I'm thirsty, give me something to drink. We are tired. The body says, give me sleep. When we feel anxious, restless, the body's saying, I need activity, get out and move, okay? And we relieve those sensations by doing what? By doing what the body wants, right? Giving it what it needs. So what we're saying is symptoms then are the message. You can't cure the person by blocking or suppressing the message. You have to respond to the message and figure out what it's telling you the body needs. So if the body needs water, is there anything I can give the body besides water that will fix it? I had a lady come in. This lady brought her mother from a nursing home into my office. Okay, I looked at this woman, and everything in me screamed dehydration. Her skin, her dry mouth, her little wrinkles, stuff like that. I said, what do you drink? I drink 2 cups of tea every day. I said, well, you're severely dehydrated. You need to drink water. She says, I hate water. Is there some pill you can give me? I said, no, because if I gave you any pill, you'd need even more water to help dissolve the nutrients in the pill. Okay? You need water. Water. You're not going to get better if you don't drink water. She left still wanting the pill that would make all of her symptoms of dehydration go away. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. You read what the body needs. So sometimes the body tells us, I don't like what you just did to me. Right? You eat something and your stomach gets upset. Or you're starting to feel stressed and you get a headache, or you've been eating certain stuff and you start to get brain fog. You can't think clearly, or you start to feel moody or irritable, and the body's saying, I don't like what you're doing to me. Stop it. But the problem is most people can't make the connection between here's my behavior and here's what I'm. Understand? There's a disconnect, because the medical profession says, oh, it's just you're getting older, or it's your genes, or, you know, it's just what happens. They don't understand that this feedback from the body is telling you what you're eating is really like making me sick and I don't like it. Okay? But people can't connect the dots because they've never been taught to listen to their body. Now, this is the one that actually opened my mind. It wasn't the other ones. It was this. It was when I realized that acute illness, all of the symptoms of acute illness, the fever, the nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea, the coughing, the runny nose, were the immune system of the body healing itself. Do you understand how radical that change of thought was for me? That when my nose is running, the runny nose is not the sickness, the runny nose is the cure. Right? The fever is not the sickness, the fever is the cure. The fever, the body elevates the temperature because it activates the immune system, inhibits the replication of viruses, and therefore is holding down the disease while the immune system has a chance to get on top of it. So if I knock down the fever, I'm actually interfering with the body's process of getting well. Do you realize how difficult that was to sit there and you've got a sick child and you have to believe that I've got to work with the body and not, bring down the fever, dry up the runny nose, stop the cough? You think, am I doing right? But I did it. You know what happened? My kids started getting well faster and faster and faster until they'd start to get a cold, and I'd have them well in 2 hours. By boosting their immune system, by actually helping the symptoms instead of fighting them, they'd get well really, really fast. But it's hard because people aren't taught to think this way. It's radical. It's really, really strange, right? And you imagine me in the 1980s, 3 decades ago, okay, processing this information and starting to understand this. I actually gave that talk in front of an audience one time on the East Coast, and a PhD immunologist walked up to me and said, "You are exactly right. You are exactly right. All of those things are your immune system at work." So then you start hearing the ads on TV, right? It says, relieves all these 12 cold symptoms, or whatever, right? And I'm thinking, it suppresses all these functions of the immune system. Because that's what it's doing. It's suppressing, poisoning all of those immune functions. And we call that medicine. And we call that healing. And it's not. Okay? So that was the breakthrough that changed my entire world, is when I stopped thinking about diseases, I stopped thinking about symptoms, and I started thinking about what makes a person healthy. What builds health? How is this person's diet, lifestyle, mental attitudes, etc., making them unhealthy, right? And how can I then guide them back to health? So I actually came to the conclusion that symptoms are good. And so I actually coined this phrase: the reason why they'll never discover a cure for the common cold is because the cold is the cure. The cold is the body curing itself. The body is congested, it's clogged with too much waste, the microbiome is upset, and so the body is initiating a cold in order to rebalance the body and clean out the debris and get the microbiome back in balance. That's what's happening when you have a cold. And if you help the body do that, you get over the cold really quickly. If you don't, it lingers on for a week or two and turns into bronchitis or whatever, right? So, if any of you have ever listened to very many motivational speakers, of course, we get to listen to a lot of them in Nature Sunshine. I've heard some great ones. And on this very, in front of this audience in Canada, I heard Michael Lozier speak, and he said the difference between positive thinking and negative thinking is thinking about what you don't want. So you're focusing your mind on what you don't want. So don't think about a purple cow. Don't think about a purple cow. Don't think about a purple cow. All you're going to do is think about a purple cow. If that's all you're doing is thinking don't, right? Okay, you have to think about what I do want, right? Okay, I want milk. Okay, well, right. So you reframe your life by shifting your focus from what you're trying to get rid of to what you actually want. So you start focusing on what do I want, right? You start thinking about what do I want and how am I going to get it, right? Instead of, I don't want this, I want to get rid of this, blah, blah, blah. You think, no, what do I want? And getting what I want crowds out everything else, right? And I thought about that in terms of health and disease, and I thought everybody's thinking about what they don't want. How do I get rid of this disease? How do I get rid of that, right? I don't want to be sick. I caught this cold, right? This is inevitable. Cancer runs in my family. Heart disease runs in my family. Diabetes runs in my family, right? I'm doomed, right? I'm too busy. I can't do this. Okay? We have to reframe the way we think. How do I build good health? How do I stay healthy? I earn the diseases I get. I don't catch them. I don't believe in catching colds. I can't catch a cold. People will be sick around me and I go, no, I can't catch a cold. As long as I'm eating healthy and not eating a bunch of junk food and taking good care of myself, I never catch a cold. Okay? No one can give me a cold. I earn it. I quit saying I caught a cold. I earned a cold. Okay? I have the power to overcome this. And I'm going to take care of my health because your health is a very vital and important asset. It's very hard to enjoy anything in life when you don't feel good, isn't it? Right? So the bottom line of what I finally figured out is this. Diseases are generally names for collections of symptoms. And the symptoms are messages the body is, either messages that the body needs something or coping mechanisms. So as messages, the body is telling us one of two things. We either lack something we need to sustain our health, or we're doing or have done something that wasn't good for our health, right? So we took a bunch of junk into our body that damaged. We got heavy metals going on or that sort of thing, right? Or we're not getting the nutrients we need because we're not eating healthy. Or as compensating mechanisms, the body is trying to expel what you did to it that wasn't good, right? Or trying to compensate for the fact that you don't have the nutrients you need. Pretty simple, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. That's the model I've used for over 30 years. And I tell you, sometimes the process, okay, is a little tricky to try to figure out what's causing it. But whenever I do figure out what's causing it and we remove the cause, the person gets well, right? We get the nutrients they need. We get rid of the toxins in their life. We change their mental attitude, their focus. So this is the disease tree. This is the model I use. And a couple of things I didn't initially have in this. Kim Ballas and a couple other people helped me add a couple of elements to this model. And one of them was we realized that illness grows out of our constitution. A constitution is what we genetically inherited from our parents. So yes, it is true that we all have genetic predispositions, right? We have family histories of things that we might be prone to. That does not mean we are doomed to have those diseases. Because we now know that genetics are regulated by what's called the epigenome. And it takes toxins and a lack of nutrients to trigger the activation of bad genes, if you will, okay? So if you lead a healthy lifestyle, you're never going to trigger that negative expression of those genes. And you may actually be able to downplay, downregulate, and alter the body so it can function with it if you do nutrients. But because, and this is where the little bit of the trickiness comes in, those who are going to be at the class I'm teaching tomorrow, I'm going to talk about this. Everybody's a little different because of our genetics. So some of us need extra B vitamins, right? Because of our genetics, or we might need extra magnesium or something. We need a little bit different nutrition or a little bit different herbs because we have these constitutional differences in order to get us well. That's one of the reasons why, if you look at what medicine does, they take a bunch of people with a symptom, right? And they give them a medicine, and a certain percentage of them, it does really, really great, right? A lot in the middle, it does pretty good. And some it doesn't do anything for or makes worse. And that's due to what? Our constitutional differences. And modern medicine never thinks about a person's constitution. Now, if you look at like any traditional herbal medicine, like traditional Chinese medicine or even traditional Western medicine, they always talked about constitution. Everybody has a constitution, right? And the kinds of herbs and diet that help you are linked with your constitution. Now, what triggers the negative aspects of your constitution into manifestation are three main root causes. And this first one is really, really important. It is mental and emotional stress. Or to put it more precisely, unresolved mental and emotional stress. Because everybody faces challenges in their lives, right? But if those challenges cause us to feel overwhelmed and adopt negative belief systems, right? Talked about that the first night, right? And I start to think, right? I'm sickly, I'm poor, I'm bad, this, blah, 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 right? Then we've never been able to effectively meet the challenge. We feel defeated by it. We're overcome by it, and we develop an attitude that there's nothing we can do about it, right? And that begins to affect our health. It affects the way we eat. It affects what we do, how we take care of ourselves. I've observed that if a person does not like themselves, they're not going to take good care of themselves. They're subconsciously, I think people eat junk food not because it's great, but because down inside they don't feel like they deserve any better. It's an inner psychological thing. You start to feel better about yourself and you want to take better care of yourself. It's an internal process. So a lot of times people know, right? You all know this, right? People know that they're not taking care of their body, right? Like me, I know I need to exercise. I've struggled with this. You know why I struggled with it? Because when I was young, I was uncoordinated, awkward, going to gym. I was always the last to be chosen on the team. That whole thing was like very, very, made me feel really bad. So there was a little thing poster at the gym, like Halloween poster says, "Don't be scared of the gym." Well, I said, that's silly. I said, no, it's marketing to me. Okay? Because I've had to work very hard to overcome that negative feeling that I will never be able to do this because I'm awkward, I'm uncoordinated, blah, 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 because okay, you're picking sides on the team. Down, there's one person left, yours truly. We'll take him. Right? Okay? So we all have these things, right? And they affect the way we see ourselves, and they affect the fact that we may not be doing the things we know we need to do, right? To be healthy. And we have to learn to go through some inner battle. And we have to help our clients do this, right? That's why I think that some of these motivational speakers we have, even though we might think of them as business people, they're actually just as important aspects of helping people get healthy as the herbs, right? Helping to shift people's mindset. The I am brilliant, right? Or whatever, right? Changing, I am healthy, right? Not I am sick, I'm always, I am healthy. Have to change these things. Now, nutrition. I mean, it makes absolute perfect sense that the body is a biological machine in which our spirit dwells, but that biological machine is constantly having to repair itself, right? Therefore, it needs all of those raw materials to effect those repairs. And if it's not getting them, then it will not be able to effect the repairs it needs to effect, right? And our body will gradually wear out and break down. And of course, we know that most people in our modern society are not getting all the nutrients they need, right? Because our diets largely consist of refined and processed food. And so, we need the vitamins, we need the minerals, We need the amino acids from the protein. We need fatty acids. And this is a very important part of nutrition we don't think about very much. All foods contain phytochemicals. All foods contain tannins and essential oils and alkaloids and saponins and all of these things that we think of as medicinal components of herbs are also present in every single food we eat in small amounts. Now, I have this kind of crazy, insane notion that things did not happen in this world by random chance. That there was a designer, and when he made the food, everything that was in that food, right, was needed for the body. We may not understand how the body needs it or why the body uses it, but when we take it apart and we say we only need this part and we don't need the rest, right? We don't know what we're doing. So I've always believed that whole foods and whole herbs are the source of the nutrition our body needs. All herbs contain nutrients. All foods contain phytochemicals. It's just the ratio between the two of them, and we can't draw a clear line between where food ends and medicine begins. So when the body is missing phytochemicals, phytonutrients, herbs supply them. Herbs are supplying the Chinese talk about inferior and superior medicine. And it's exactly the opposite of the way people in the West think. To them, a medicine that acts in a drug-like fashion may be useful temporarily, but it is an inferior medicine. So, in Chinese terms, cascara sagrada would be inferior to purify. Why? Because one is pushing the bowel to move. The other one is what? Providing phytonutrients that what? Heal the gut. Do you understand the difference? In the superior medicine is the medicine that's actually supplying the nutrients or phytochemicals the body needs to restore normalcy, right? So the body functions the way it should. You know, nothing wrong with using a little cascara in the beginning to clean everything out, right? But you got to go and rebuild. And I used to I used to not like to take vitamin supplements and so forth because I thought, okay, I'm eating mostly whole foods. I'm not eating a lot of refined processed. And then I started to look at it and go with the agricultural methods and everything that we have and the fact that most food at the grocery store is 2 to 3 weeks old, right? I decided, nope, I think we need nutrients, and we need nutrients also because of the next thing we're going to talk about. Because we are all exposed to toxins. And it takes all those nutrients to detoxify all those chemicals we're exposed to. See, that's the third major root cause of disease, is the toxicity that we're experiencing in our environment. Been trying to teach this to the kids at home. You know, they like the sugar-sweetened breakfast cereal, and I looked at the bag of this stuff, and it said on it trisodium phosphate. Well, my dad and my uncles were painting contractors, and trisodium phosphate is this chemical you dump into a bucket of water and put on rubber gloves, and you sit there and wash the grime and stuff off the walls so the next coat of paint will stick. And on the label it says, you know, harmful if ingested, call a doctor, you know, gastrointestinal irritant, don't get it on your skin, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay, right? And it's sitting in the food for, you know, I mean, right? It's in the food. Yet you buy a box of this stuff at the hardware store and it has all these cautions about how toxic it is. All right? So So you eat it, no wonder your gastrointestinal system gets irritated and you have all these problems, blah, blah. You're eating something that you have to wear rubber gloves just to wash walls with it, okay? And yeah, okay, it's tiny amounts, but you take tiny amount of this and a tiny amount of that and tiny amount of this, and you take the glycophosphates and you take the this and that and the other, and pretty soon your whole body is disrupted, right? Can't function properly because it's being minute amounts of poison, you know? I can try to poison you quickly by giving you a whole big dose of arsenic, right? But you might actually notice that the food tastes a little funny, right? But if I slip just a little teeny bit into you every single day, right? You know, my coffee tastes a little weird, you know, but you know, get used to drinking it, and then pretty soon it slowly poisons you, right? And that is really one of the things that's really happening in our culture. Heavy metals. Like I went to the I taught a class with Jay on heavy metals before the NSP USA convention, and then heard the talk. And I never heard this before. But you know, you store heavy metals in your body. Lead gets stored in your bones. The mercury gets stored in your fat. Okay, so when a woman is pregnant, you know what happens? She's breaking down the bone to get the calcium for the baby, and you know, breaking down the fat because she needs more energy. All those heavy metals go through the placenta and into the baby, and our children are born with heavy metal toxicity. And we wonder why we're having increasing neurological disorders. You know, because all heavy metals poison the nervous system. Okay? You know, cleaning this stuff out is a major, major thing people need to do, right? We have got to, you know, help wake people up to understand why they're getting sick. Because people perish for lack of knowledge. They don't know. And if they knew, they could do something about it. Now, we're not going to be able to convince everybody, right? Because a lot of people go, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, where's your degrees, right? Okay? But the fact of the matter is truth. Whether it's spoken by an herbalist like me or a PhD scientist, it doesn't matter. It's still the truth, right? And we need to go and educate people on these things. Now, of course, there is one smaller root on this tree, which is physical injury. You step in front of a moving car, you'll get sick pretty fast, right? Okay? Injuries are also an underlying cause of illness. Now, injury doesn't just happen from accidents. It also happens because of repetitive movements, like not having good posture, right? Or like me, sitting at a computer too long, right? Okay? And so we have to learn to compensate for those things. And also just lifestyle factors in general, not getting the sleep we need, right? That's very injurious to the body not to get the sleep we need or not to get the physical activity we need. So we also have to think in terms of just a healthy lifestyle in preventing accidents and so forth. Now, all this affects only one thing. There's only one trunk on this tree. The trunk is the connection between the root causes and the final presenting symptoms. And the trunk of the tree is the biological terrain. The biological terrain is the internal environment of the body. It is the fluid that surrounds every cell in the body, the blood and the lymph, okay? It was scientifically proven by Alexis Carrel in the 1930s that basically if you provided the proper environment for cells, they would live indefinitely. They would live and reproduce indefinitely. They never got sick and they never aged and they never showed any signs of growing old. So what causes us to get old? It's an increasing imbalance in the biological terrain of our body, with toxins that shouldn't be there, not the nutrients we need, not sufficient water, in other words, the environment starts to break down, and when the environment starts to break down, the cells start to struggle to cope, right? And that's what gives rise to illness. So internal environment things become like having chronic inflammation and the dysbiosis, the lack of balance in the friendly flora in our gut, and they're developing the leaky gut and developing congestion in our lymphatic systems and getting our pH going too acidic. Now, all of this is, remember, not root causes, right? Okay? This is what's resulting from the root causes, these things that then disrupt the normal function of the body and cause the cells to become disordered. It is the cellular environment that determines the health of the cell. So, a lot of what I came to understand about herbs, and we're not talking about this today, but herbs and nutrients, is they help to balance the biological terrain. They can cool the inflammation, they can help the body absorb water to increase the hydration, they can help start adjusting the pH, in other words, to create a better environment for the cells, so the cell's healthier, right? Now, does that eliminate the need for water? Nope. Does it eliminate the need for eating healthy food? Nope. Does it eliminate the need for exercise? Nope. We still need to always work on the nutrition, the detoxification, and the person's attitude and healthy lifestyle, but we can get them feeling better faster by giving them remedies that help to balance their biological terrain, right? That's really, really important. And out of the biological terrain imbalance arises the disruption and function of the body systems. So your adrenals get tired, right? Your stomach doesn't produce enough hydrochloric acid. Your liver starts struggling to detoxify the chemicals you're exposed to. And that's the other aspect of herbalism, is that herbs work to balance biological terrain and restore normalcy to different body systems. Right? And when I understood that, I completely quit thinking about herbs in terms of diseases. I do not think of herbs in terms of diseases. I think of herbs in terms of what body systems do they work on, and are they warming, cooling, moistening, drying, relaxing, toning, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And what's nice about that is when I was trying to do this business, I signed up as a distributor in this company in 1980. I was first exposed to their products in 1975, again in 1978. And then I decided I wanted to be a distributor. Signed up in 1980. Company says, can't diagnose diseases and don't prescribe treatments for diseases. I go to a meeting, and what the manager above me is doing is going through a list of diseases and telling me all the herbal remedies for them. Okay? I'm thinking, well, how do you do this disease legally? But at the same time as when I met Edward Milo Millett, ran into the work of Samuel Thompson, and got, oh, I get it. I saw the disease tree. I saw this whole process, and I thought, no, herbs work by restoring balance to the body. I don't need to know all these diseases. If someone comes to me and tells me a disease I have never, ever heard of before, okay, I don't care. You know why? Because I'm not trying to cure their disease. I'm going to take an intake. I'm going to look at what their diet is, what their lifestyle is, what kind of nutritional deficiencies they have, what kind of stresses they might be under. I'm going to start working on root causes. Why? Because I believe if I work on root causes and help them live a healthier life, what will happen? Their body will heal itself. Right? The intelligence that God placed in the body will heal the body if we provide the right environment, right? The right environment. That's how this works. And that gave me, because now I could say, hey, looks like, your liver's a little stressed. I'm going to give you some herbs that are going to help your liver to detoxify better, blah, blah. I am not talking in terms of diseases, right? I'm talking in terms of structure and function, and it makes all the difference in the world. The only reason why I resisted writing a book like The Comprehensive Guide for years simply because I didn't want to link diseases to remedies. But I tried to write it when I wrote it so that it would, linking things to here's what's going on underneath that you need to work on to try to get people to think this way, because they're starting from disease and I've got to maneuver them over to thinking about health. That's the challenge. I got to move them out of the disease mindset over to thinking about their health. And the thing that's great is if they think about their health, they're not going to take some products until they feel better and then go away. They're going to be using products like me and probably most of you, what? Every day. Do you guys use these products all the time? I do. I take stuff every day to try to keep myself healthy. Okay? So basically, here's just a couple of ideas about this. And many of you have heard of the idea of the habit of health. There are basic things a lot of people are lacking: vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, essential fatty acids, probiotics, enzymes, fiber, and not getting adequate amount of protein. They're eating too many carbs. Now, you know where this originated? I was sitting at a table with Dr. Hugo Rodier and Dr. Kimberly Ballas after a convention at Nature Sunshine in Salt Lake City. And we were all sitting around talking, and Dr. Rodier said, when someone comes to me with their diseases, I tell them to do this and this and this and this and come back and see me in 30 days. Okay? And we all agreed that certain things like putting them on a vitamin mineral supplement, giving them some probiotics, some essential fatty acids, if they were having digestive problems, giving them enzymes, we came up with this little short list of products that almost everybody needs. You give them some of these basic stuff and tell them, and make a couple of dietary changes, come back and see me in 30 days. And you know what we all agreed? In 30 days, half of their health problems will be gone. Right? Now I can work on what's left. Right? And so people think that this, because they get into the idea of I've got to, treat all this disease and that disease and other, they get overwhelmed and they feel, you know what I'm talking about. They're nervous starting this business, right? We got to educate our distributors and new people. You don't have to do that. You just have to understand some basic things. You need to understand how to put someone on a cleanse. Recognize some symptoms when they need enzymes, right? Or some fiber. Just a few basic things that are working on some of the root issues that the person has. You start to work on these things because the body does not heal selectively. Everything you do to help the body be healthier makes the entire body healthier. And if they start to feel better, then what are they going to do? They're going to come back and see you again, right? And if they come back and see you again because you helped them, what else are they going to do? They're going to bring people. And that's really how you grow the business, right? Starts out slow, but as you work at it and you practice, it gets better and better. And I would encourage you just to learn some few products to begin with and make sure you understand when does someone need fiber? When does someone need digestive enzymes? When do they need more protein? Just be able to see these basic things in people, and you can start helping people tomorrow. You don't need to know the whole product line. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know how to work on some of the basic root issues that just 95% of the people out there have, right? And then the other thing that really, really helped me was the Chinese herbs, okay? Because when I started to understand the Chinese herbs is about biological terrain and body systems and energetics. And so here's a whole group of products just built around a traditional herbal model that balance out the body. Okay, so the other was working on some of those root things, right? Getting some of those basic nutritional deficiencies corrected, helping the body detoxify, right? And then this is working on body systems and biological terrain. And once I understood how to use the Chinese herb formula, almost everybody who came into my office, I figured out a Chinese herbal formula for them, right? A couple of basic nutritional things, a Chinese herb formula. You know, 3 or 4 days later, they're feeling better. It doesn't have to be complicated. We make it overly complicated because as we've been in the business for a long time, we learn a whole bunch of stuff and we learn a lot more and more and more, right? And then the problem is that we forget, right? That new client coming in has never heard any of this, right? And we need to start right at the very beginning, and we need to teach everybody from the basics from the very beginning. That also helps them feel more confident in getting involved in the business and telling their friends and so forth. Just getting back to these very, very basic fundamental truths. To paraphrase something my father said, the philosophies of the world are simply profound, but the truth is profoundly simple, right? And that's what I've learned, is when I am able to boil away all of the, 15 scientific studies and and this neural pathway works on this and that, and I get back to the basic things, okay? God made our body. God made the food. God made the herbs. God made man to have a healthy lifestyle. We've diverted from that, right? We're full of negative thinking, negative attitudes, negative beliefs. We're eating horribly. We're being exposed to chemicals. If we just start reining all of that in, start living a healthier life, okay? I know people, my parents, I'm now 64. When I started teaching distributor school for Nature's Sunshine, manager school for Nature's Sunshine in the 1980s, my parents were already in their late 60s. My parents got healthier because actually, unlike a lot of people, I was lucky. My parents actually believed in what I was doing, and they actually would let me give them herbs and supplements and so forth. And I remember 10 years later, my parents said to me, "We're so grateful you got into this because we look at all of our friends." They're late 70s right now. And they're all on 5 or 6 or 7 pills, from the pharmacy. Now it's sometimes like 10 or 15, right? And they're all horrible. And we're in good shape. And every time I see people who are older who come into my office, if they're on those 5 or 10 or whatever pills, they're not doing well. But if they're someone who's gotten involved in this, and they're trying to do nutritional supplements, and they're trying to do the herbs, and they're trying to go the natural way, they're always healthier. They're always easier to tweak their program and get them healthier, okay? So that's why we have a mission. Like I said, this talk I just gave today, I wish I could give this talk in front of stadiums full of people because the world needs to understand this, right? It's radical from the way people have been programmed to think, but it's true. I have worked with these concepts for 38 years. They have consistently worked. They enabled me to switch from getting haphazard, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, results with using herbs and supplements, to getting very consistent results with herbs and supplements if people are willing to do what they need to do. Thank you, Canada. Appreciate you being here. Please, let's spread the message. Thanks.